When people begin learning English, they usually focus on speaking, listening, reading, and writing. They believe these are the four main skills, and of course, they are important. But there is another skill, a hidden one, that makes the biggest difference between a beginner and a more advanced learner. The ability to think in English. Thinking in English means that when you see the world around you, when you make plans, or when you talk to yourself silently in your head, you use English instead of your first language. At first, this may sound impossible. How can you think in a language that you are still learning? But the truth is that thinking in English is not only possible, it is also one of the most powerful habits you can develop at the A2 level. Why is this habit so powerful? Because when you think in English, you stop wasting time translating. Most beginners always translate in their heads. They think in their own language first. Then they search for the English word. Then they try to put the words together. This process is slow, heavy, and full of mistakes. But when you learn to think directly in English, your sentences come more naturally. You no longer have to stop and translate every word. You simply speak, just like you do in your first language. Thinking in English also makes the language part of your daily life. It is no longer something you practice only during study time. It becomes something you use constantly, quietly, while you walk, cook, or wait for the bus. Even without speaking out loud, you are practicing. Every thought becomes a mini English lesson. Of course, this skill does not appear overnight. It begins with very small steps. At first, you may only think of single words in English like coffee, school, or tomorrow. Then you begin to think in short sentences like I am hungry or I have a meeting. Later, these small sentences grow into bigger ones. I am hungry because I did not eat breakfast, or I have a meeting at 10, but I hope it finishes early. Slowly, your mind gets used to creating ideas directly in English, without translation. In this lesson, we are going to explore exactly how you can start thinking in English every day. You will see why it is important, what problems you need to avoid, and which habits will help you succeed. You will also learn practical exercises you can use in your daily life to make English your natural way of thinking. By the end of this lesson, you will understand that thinking in English is not only for advanced learners, it is something you can begin right now, step by step, until English becomes a part of the way your mind works. Many learners ask themselves, why should I try to think in English if I can already translate from my own language? At first, translation feels safe. It is a bridge between what you know and what you want to say. But if you depend on translation forever, you will always walk slowly across that bridge, step by step, word by word. Thinking in English removes the bridge and allows you to walk freely without delay. When you think in English, communication becomes faster. Imagine you are in a cafe and someone asks, "What do you usually eat for breakfast?" If you think in your own language first, you must translate each idea. Bread, coffee, sometimes fruit. How do I say this in English? By the time you finish translating, the conversation has already moved on. But if you think directly in English, the answer comes naturally. I usually eat bread and fruit, and I drink coffee. There is no pause, no stress, just smooth communication. Another reason thinking in English matters is because it builds confidence. Many learners feel nervous when speaking, not because they do not know words, but because they do not trust their ability to say them quickly. Translation takes time, and during that time, fear grows. But when you practice thinking directly in English, you trust your mind more. You know the words are already there, and you can use them without hesitation. Thinking in English also helps you understand others better. If you always depend on translation, you are always one step behind. Someone speaks to you, you translate in your mind, and only then do you understand. But when your thoughts are already in English, you connect faster. You begin to understand meaning directly without the extra step. This is the same skill that allows you to watch movies, listen to songs, or follow conversations without stopping to think of every word. Finally, thinking in English matters because it changes the way you see yourself as a learner. You stop being someone who studies English only during certain hours, and you become someone who lives in English all day. Your inner voice, the silent conversation you have with yourself, becomes your teacher. And this teacher is always with you, always ready, always helping. This is why thinking in English is not only a technique, it is a transformation. It turns English from something external, something outside of you, into something internal, something that lives in your mind every moment. That change is what takes you from A1 to A2 and prepares you for even higher levels. For many learners, translation feels natural. It is the first tool you use when you begin with English, and at the very beginning, it is helpful. You learn that house means casa, or that eat means comer, and it feels clear. But as you continue learning, translation becomes a problem because it keeps you trapped in your first language. Instead of thinking in English, you are always stopping, translating, and then trying to speak. The first problem is speed. Imagine you want to say, I need to buy some bread after work. If you think in your first language, you must translate word by word. I need to buy some bread after work. Each step is slow, and by the time you finish, the conversation has already passed. Communication does not wait for translation. Real conversations move quickly, and if you cannot follow the rhythm, you feel frustrated. The second problem is accuracy. Languages are not mirrors. Words do not always match perfectly. For example, in English we say make a decision, not do a decision. If you translate directly from another language, you might say something that sounds strange or even wrong. Translation often produces sentences that are technically understandable but not natural. And when your sentences are not natural, people may understand you, but you do not sound confident. The third problem is energy. Translating all the time is exhausting. Your brain is doing double work. First, it thinks in your own language, then it searches for English, then it builds the sentence. This extra work makes you feel tired very quickly, and sometimes you give up speaking because it feels too heavy. Thinking directly in English saves energy and makes communication smoother. Another problem with constant translation is that it keeps you from listening well. When someone speaks to you, instead of paying attention to their words, you are busy translating in your head. By the time you finish, you miss the next part of the conversation. This creates a cycle where you always feel behind. But when you stop translating, you can listen more freely, catch the meaning directly, and respond naturally. Finally, translation keeps you emotionally connected to fear. You are always worried about finding the right word in English, always afraid of mistakes. But mistakes are part of learning, and thinking directly in English helps you accept them. Translation, on the other hand, makes you hesitate, and hesitation feeds fear. This is why translation is useful at the very beginning. but dangerous if you never let it go. It is like using training wheels on a bicycle. They help you at first, but if you never remove them, you will never ride freely. To grow, you must move past translation and allow yourself to think in English every day. The human brain is more flexible than we often imagine. It is designed to adapt, to learn, and to create new connections throughout life. This ability is called neuroplasticity, and it is the reason you can learn new skills even as an adult. When it comes to languages, your brain is like a living map that expands every time you listen, read, speak, or think in English. Each new word, each new phrase, creates a pathway in your mind, and the more you use that pathway, the stronger it becomes. Think about how you learn to ride a bicycle. At first, every movement feels strange. You must remember to balance, to pedal, to hold the handlebars, and to look forward all at the same time. It feels impossible. But after many days of practice, something changes. Your brain creates a new system, and suddenly you ride the bicycle without thinking. Language works in the same way. At the beginning, you must think about every little part. Grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. But with practice, your brain adapts, and these things begin to flow more naturally. When you think in English, you are training your brain to adapt faster. You are teaching it to use English not as a subject you study, but as a tool you live with. Each time you think a sentence like "I am hungry" or "I need to go to the store," your brain strengthens the English pathway. Over time, these pathways become stronger than the translation pathway, and English becomes your automatic response. Another important fact is that your brain loves patterns. It does not only remember single words, it remembers groups of words and the rhythm they create. This is why listening is so powerful. When you hear the same expression many times, like, "How are you doing?" or "See you later," your brain saves it as one piece. Later, when you need it, the whole phrase comes out without effort. Thinking in English uses this same process because you are repeating patterns directly in your mind. The brain also connects language with emotion. If you think in English while you are happy, relaxed, or excited, your brain remembers better. This is why practicing in real situations, ordering food, talking with friends, or even thinking about your plans makes the language stronger. The emotion gives energy to the memory, and the words stay longer. The good news is that this adaptation happens to everyone. It does not matter if you are young or old, fast or slow. If you give your brain enough input through listening and enough practice through thinking, it will adapt. It will create the connections you need to move from A2 to higher levels. Your brain is ready. All it needs is your decision to use English every day, not only outside but also inside your mind. Big changes in language learning do not come from one giant effort. They come from small habits repeated every day. If you want to start thinking in English, you do not need hours of complicated study. What you need are small, simple actions that you can include in your daily routine. These little habits may feel unimportant in the moment, but over time they transform the way your brain works. One small habit is naming the objects around you in English. When you wake up, look at the things in your room and say their names silently in your mind: bed, pillow, window, phone. If you do this every morning, those words become automatic. You no longer need to translate. The English word appears directly. Another habit is telling the time in English. Every time you check your watch or your phone, do not only think it's 7:30 in your language. Instead, say it in English in your head. It's 7:30 or it's 7:30. The action takes only a second, but each repetition makes the phrase more natural. You can also describe small actions during your day. When you walk to the bus stop, think, I am walking to the bus stop. I see the street. I hear the cars. When you prepare food, think, I am cutting the bread. I am boiling the water. I am making coffee. At first, your sentences will be short and simple. Later, you can expand them. I am making coffee because I feel tired this morning and I need more energy. Another habit is using English for your plans. Before you go to sleep, imagine your next day in English. Think, tomorrow I will go to work. After that, I will meet my friend. In the evening, I will read a book. This exercise only takes a few minutes, but it teaches your brain to plan in English, not only to describe the present. These habits do not require extra time. You are already naming objects, telling the time, describing actions, and making plans in your first language every day. The only change is to do them in English. And when you do them in English, your mind begins to adapt. English stops being a subject you study and becomes part of your thinking. Small daily habits are powerful because they are easy to repeat. You may not notice progress after one day or even after 1 week, but after 1 month, you realize that your mind is faster. Your vocabulary is more active, and English feels closer to you. That is the magic of small habits. They look small, but they create big changes. One of the easiest ways to begin thinking in English is by using simple sentences in your mind. Many learners wait until they can make long, complex sentences before they try, but this only creates pressure. The truth is that short, simple sentences are the strongest foundation you can build. They are easy to remember, easy to repeat, and powerful enough to train your brain to think in English every day. You can begin with sentences that describe the present moment. For example, I am sitting on the bus. I am looking at my phone. I am listening to music. These are not complicated ideas, but they connect your mind directly with English. Instead of thinking in your first language, you are living your daily life in English. Each time you do this, your brain practices without stress. Later, you can add small details to expand the sentences. Instead of I am listening to music, you can think, I am listening to music because I feel tired and it helps me relax. Instead of I am sitting on the bus, you can think, I am sitting on the bus and I see many people around me, but I feel calm. With each addition, the sentence grows and your thinking becomes richer. Another useful exercise is to practice simple questions and answers in your head. For example, ask yourself silently, what am I doing right now? And answer, I am drinking water. Or ask, what will I do later? And answer, I will call my friend. This creates a small dialogue in your mind, and dialogues are powerful because they prepare you for real conversations. Do not worry about mistakes at this stage. Thinking in English is private. No one can hear your errors. That privacy gives you freedom to experiment, to try new words, and to play with language. The important part is not perfection, but practice. Each simple sentence is like a brick, and with many bricks, you build a strong house of English in your mind. The key is repetition. The more often you use simple sentences, the more natural they become. After some weeks, you will notice that English sentences appear in your mind automatically, without effort. That is when you know you are truly starting to think in English. Remember, long sentences will come later. For now, use simple sentences, repeat them often, and enjoy the process. They are small, but they are enough to change the way your brain works. As you begin thinking in English with simple sentences, you will notice something interesting. At first, your mind uses the same small group of words again and again. You think, I am tired, I am hungry, I go to work, I like music. These sentences are good because they help you practice, but soon you will want to say more. This is the moment when you must expand your inner vocabulary. Expanding does not mean memorizing hundreds of new words every day. It means slowly adding useful words to your mental dictionary and actually using them in your thoughts. The best way to expand vocabulary inside your mind is by connecting it to your daily life. If you always eat fruit in the morning, make sure you know the words apple, banana, orange, grapes. Then when you think about your breakfast, you can say, I usually eat an apple and some grapes in the morning. When you walk outside, notice what you see. Maybe there are trees, cars, buildings, shops. Use these words in simple sentences. I see a big tree. The shop is open. The car is very old. By connecting new words with your real environment, your memory becomes stronger. Another technique is substitution. When you already know a word in your language, try to replace it with English in your thoughts. For example, instead of thinking, tengo calor, try to think, I feel hot. Instead of voy al trabajo, think, I'm going to work. At first, you will forget, but the more you try, the faster the English words will appear automatically. This simple substitution habit is one of the fastest ways to expand your inner vocabulary. Listening also plays a big role here. Each time you listen to English, you meet new words. Do not try to memorize all of them at once. Choose 1 or 2 words that feel useful to your life and repeat them in your mind later. For example, if you hear the word excited in a podcast, later you can think, I am excited about tomorrow's meeting, or I feel excited when I play football. Using the new word in your inner voice makes it part of you. The most important thing is to grow your vocabulary step by step. If you add a few new words every week and use them in your thoughts, your inner English will become richer and more flexible. Over time, you will notice that your sentences are no longer limited to I like or I go. You will be able to describe feelings, give reasons, and talk about the past and future with more detail. Expanding your inner vocabulary is not about collecting words on paper. It is about making words alive in your thoughts, where they become ready to use at any time. If you want to think in English every day, listening must be your main source of ideas. Your inner voice cannot create English sentences from nothing. It needs examples, it needs models, and it needs repetition. This is why listening is so important. Each time you listen to English, you are feeding your brain with the sounds, rhythms, and structures of the language. Later, when you are silent, your mind can use those same sentences to think. Imagine listening to a podcast where someone says, I usually wake up at 7, but on weekends, I sleep a little longer. When you hear this sentence many times, your brain remembers the pattern. Later, when you wake up on a Saturday, the same idea appears in your mind. Today, I woke up at 7, but tomorrow I will sleep longer. You are not translating. You are simply reusing the structure you heard. Listening gives you the materials. Your thinking builds with them. Another example is common expressions. If you only memorize the word thanks, you may feel limited. But if you listen to people saying, "Thanks a lot, thanks for your help, thanks anyway," your inner voice will have more options. When you are alone, you can practice them silently in your head. Thanks for the coffee. Thanks for waiting. Thanks a lot. Listening gives you variations, and these variations make your inner English more flexible. Listening also helps with natural speed. When you only study from books, your sentences may sound slow and mechanical. But when you hear real English often, you notice how words connect. Gonna instead of going to, wanna instead of want to. These small details enter your thoughts as well. Suddenly, your inner voice begins to think, "I'm gonna call my friend," instead of "I am going to call my friend." This is how listening shapes the way you think. It is important to balance active and passive listening. Active listening is when you focus carefully, maybe repeating or writing down ideas. Passive listening is when English plays in the background while you cook, walk, or rest. Both are useful. Active listening gives you clear models, and passive listening gives you constant exposure. Together, they create a rich environment for your inner English to grow. The role of listening is simple but powerful. It fills your mind with living English. Without listening, your thoughts will always return to your first language. With listening, English becomes familiar, and your inner voice finally has something real to use. One of the reasons many learners avoid thinking in English is fear. They worry about mistakes, even when the mistakes are only inside their own minds. They think, "What if my sentence is wrong? What if my grammar is not correct? What if I do not use the right word?" This fear creates silence, not only in conversations but also in private thoughts. Instead of practicing, the learner stops, waits, and returns to their first language. But if you want to think in English every day, you must break this fear. The first step is to remember that mistakes are natural. Every child learning their first language makes thousands of mistakes. They say "goed" instead of "went," or "mouses" instead of "mice." Parents do not punish them. They correct them gently, and the child keeps speaking. With time, the mistakes disappear. The same will happen to you. If you think "I go to the park yesterday," it may not be correct, but it is still useful. Your brain is practicing, and practice always creates progress. The second step is to understand that no one can hear your inner voice. Thinking in English is private. It belongs only to you. That means you can make unlimited mistakes without shame. You can try strange combinations of words, unusual phrases, or experimental grammar, and no one will laugh at you. This freedom is powerful. It allows you to practice without pressure, to build confidence inside before showing it outside. Another way to break the fear is to focus on meaning, not on form. If your thought communicates the idea, it is already successful. For example, if you think, "Yesterday I go to the shop and buy milk," the grammar is not perfect, but the meaning is clear. Over time, with more listening and more practice, your brain will correct itself. One day, without trying, the thought becomes, "Yesterday I went to the shop and bought milk." The correction happens naturally, but only because you allowed yourself to practice without fear first. Finally, remember that fear is a signal of growth. If you feel nervous about thinking in English, it means your brain is leaving its comfort zone. Instead of seeing fear as an enemy, see it as proof that you are learning. The more you face it, the weaker it becomes. Breaking the fear of mistakes is not about avoiding errors. It is about accepting them as part of the process. When you allow yourself to think in English freely, mistakes become steps, not obstacles. And with each step, your inner English grows stronger, preparing you for real conversations with confidence. If you want to start thinking in English every day, you need simple and practical exercises that you can use in real situations. The good news is that you do not need a classroom, a teacher, or even a lot of free time. You can train your mind while living your normal life. By turning ordinary moments into practice, you create hundreds of opportunities to grow without stress. The first exercise is narration. As you move through your day, describe what you are doing in English. If you are cooking, think, I am washing the vegetables. I am cutting the tomato. I am turning on the stove. If you are traveling, think, I am waiting for the bus. The bus is late. I see many people at the station. These simple sentences keep your brain active, and with repetition, they become automatic. The second exercise is planning. Before you begin your day, spend 1 or 2 minutes planning in English. Think, today I will go to work. After work, I will meet my friend. In the evening, I will watch a movie. At night, you can do the same for tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will wake up early. I will clean the house. I will study English for 1 hour. By practicing this habit, your inner voice begins to prepare naturally in English instead of translating from your first language. Another useful exercise is substitution. Whenever you have a thought in your own language, pause and try to say it in English. It can be short, like I am hungry, or it is cold today. At first, you will forget, but the more you try, the faster your brain will switch to English. This creates the habit of automatic thinking, where English becomes your first choice. You can also practice with imagination. Create short mental stories in English. Imagine a conversation at the cafe. I order coffee. The waiter asks me, "Do you want sugar?" I say, "Yes, please." Imagine your next holiday. I will travel to the beach. I will swim in the ocean. I will eat fresh food. These small stories make English alive in your mind, and they prepare you for future situations. Finally, use small pauses in your day. Waiting for the elevator? Think in English. Walking to school? Think in English. Standing in line at the store? Think in English. These short moments add up, and soon you realize you are spending more and more of your day inside English thoughts. These exercises are simple, but they are powerful. They do not require extra time, only the decision to use English in the life you already live. By turning normal activities into practice, you make English part of your reality, not just part of your study routine. When you begin to think in English, the results may look small. You may only create short sentences or repeat the same words. But with time, these small efforts grow into big progress. Thinking in English is not only useful today, it prepares you for the future. One of the first long-term benefits is fluency. If you always translate in your head, you move slowly. But when you think directly in English, your words come faster and more naturally. Conversations become smoother because you no longer stop to search for every word. Another benefit is confidence. Many learners feel nervous when they speak because they are not sure if they can find the right words. But if you have already practiced sentences in your mind many times, you feel ready. The ideas are already familiar, and speaking becomes easier. Thinking in English also makes listening stronger. When your inner voice is already using English, Your brain recognizes words more quickly when you hear them. This makes movies, songs, and real conversations easier to follow. And maybe the most beautiful benefit is that English becomes part of who you are. You can plan, dream, and imagine in English, not only study it. The language becomes a natural part of your life. These benefits may not appear in one day, but with daily practice, they always come. Thinking in English every day is a small habit, but in the long term, it opens the door to fluency, confidence, and real progress. Thinking in English is not about speed, it is about habit. Each small thought in English makes your mind stronger. At first, you may only say a word or two. Later, you build sentences. With time, the words appear naturally without translation. Do not worry about mistakes. They are part of the process and show that you are learning. The important step is to keep going every day with one more sentence in your mind. The more you practice, the more English becomes part of your life, not only something you study. Step by step, thought by thought, you create the path to fluency. So start today. Think in English, even in small ways, and let the language grow inside you.